AskReddit by Ontario Tomcat. Those that did a DNA test, what's the most bizarre shocking thing you have discovered? Just head over to r/23andme and search by top. The most screwed up one I saw on there was a dude and his girlfriend of 2 took it. Turned out they were half sibling, and both were from the same sperm donor. Proof and everything was in the post. The girl immediately broke it off after finding out. The dude was in limbo wanting to make it work. Man, me and my first ex had a relation scare for a bit. As we got to know each other more, we discovered we were related to some of the same people, but after asking my mom how exactly we were related to them, turns out there was a marriage that linked us, and not blood. Huge relief. My friend found out he descended from Nazis that fled to Argentina. He was told he was Argentinian his whole life. Turns out that was somewhat accurate. I'm Canadian, but my grandpa came from Austria. Finding my great uncle's war medals at 22 was a bit of a surprise. I was contacted by my older brother 2 years ago. My parents gave him up, got married a year later, then had me and my siblings. Mother took the secret to the grave. I thought I was the oldest all my life, named after my dad. Now I find out I had an older brother all along. A shock for you, but it must have been really difficult for him to find out that his parents were still together and had more kids. What did your dad say? My very snobby prim and proper family member, by marriage only, found out her grandmother was actually a prostitute who went on the run after killing her husband. Her crimes tallied up to prostituting in 4 countries where it was illegal, 3 separate counts of bigamy, 2 of murder, multiple thefts, multiple assaults. Family member tried hiding the results lol. Well, I guess you have no good reply when an old raggedy lady calls to you in the street to tell you come from a family of whores and murderers. Found out I had an aunt on my dad's side who was given up cause she was conceived during an affair. Her adoptive parents lived in the same town, and she went to school with my dad but didn't know he was her half-brother. She was also in my mom's friend group, so that when I saw her and asked my mom if she knew her, she was like, yeah, I'll call her right now. It was wild. My grandma denies it all too. I told my grandma I did 23andMe. She promptly freaked out and sat my dad and I down and said that she did not birth him, but also did not adopt him. A doctor at the hospital she worked at gave him to her, and she had to keep it a secret or multiple people would have lost their jobs. I'm not sure what I believe at this point. Are you sure it wasn't kidnapping? I guess I could pretend that I was shocked to find out my dad is not my biological father. I didn't think he wasn't, but I knew there was a possibility considering my mom's social habits. Turns out my father is my dad's best friend and the kid I played with as a toddler was my half-brother. Both are dead, as is my mom, so my dad and I just don't acknowledge it and carry on as usual. The same thing happened to me on my 18th birthday, just my bio dad is still a mystery. My best friend found out a few years ago, in her late 40s, that she has 2 half-sisters from a different mother. Her sisters knew she existed, and even her first name, but didn't know anything else about her. Her sisters are just like her. Same eyes, smile, and hair. Same shoe size. Same great sense of humor, deep compassion, and strong intellect. The physical resemblance is shocking enough, but it was hearing all 3 of them laugh in the exact same way that tripped me out the most. I left my story earlier, but I have heard from 2 different people, only one of them is someone I know, that there are 2 women out there who look very much like me and have the exact same laugh. I've seen a picture of one of them, she's a nurse in Eastern WA. The other is an accountant in Seattle. These 2 ladies have not popped up as anything close on 23andMe or Ancestry, so I'll likely never find out who they are. Sadly, I learned that I am, in fact, actually related to my dumpster fire of a family. I'd always secretly hoped I was adopted. I'm adopted. My oldest son was literally the first blood relative of mine I'd ever met. That I'm actually Jewish and my last name isn't German. My grandparents changed it to sound more German for reasons my dad didn't even know. The second he found out, he started connecting with distant relatives and pulled it all together. Even found some documents with our real last name. Wow, amazing. Is your family from Germany? Meanwhile, my last name is German, and despite the assumptions of almost everyone in my life, I learned that I'm not remotely Ashkenazi Jewish. Found out I'm donor conceived at 31. So far I have 13 half siblings. Geez, do you feel any connection with them cause they're half siblings? Or no, because you're all donor babies? Not me, but my great aunt. Growing up, her siblings joked that their neighbor was her real father because she looked different from them. That turned out to be true. To add to that, her sister, my grandmother, had a son with a neighbor's son, so my great aunt is my uncle's aunt on both sides. That's so wild. I was adopted and my kids got me 23andMe for Mother's Day a few years back. I found out that my bio mother had 7 babies and gave them all up for adoption. And that her father had gone to prison for moonshining, learned how to counterfeit while he was in prison, got out and started doing that and got busted and went back to prison. Actually, my bio mother's side of the family is pretty wild and crazy in a lot of ways. Lots of men had to moonshine to support their families. The federal government hates anything that deprives them of tax revenue, so they have disproportionately harsh sentences for doing it. My great uncle fathered a child while fighting in the Vietnam War. The kid was one of the Operation Babalift kids and grew up in Ohio. My dad found him on 23andMe, started talking, and he eventually flew out for a little family reunion. Great guy with an amazing life story. My father raped teenage girls that he taught. I found out that I had siblings and nieces nephews. Also found out why other kids' moms would throw me out of the house once they knew my full name. Found out that some of my teachers were his victims. And more keeps coming. Wow, that must have been a deep blow when you found out. Okay, found out wife's great-grandfather married his sister. Changed last name to avoid detection, moved. All that. I found out I was a descendant of 41 skeletons found in a burial cave, the Liechtenstein Hole, in Germany dating back 2,500 years. Apparently they were either Frisians or Visigoths. They found another descendant less than 5 km from the cave. The descendants of Cheddar Man in the UK have an even older lineage. Seems I always come second. How did you find this out? That's fascinating. I have a half brother living somewhere in the USA who is 30 or so years older than me. Have you been in touch? Confirmed a long-standing family rumor that my great-grandmother on my mother's side had a shotgun marriage in order to hide her fondness for spicy Italian sausage. I'm sorry, what? I found out about my Russian ancestry. Apparently in 1918 my great-great-grandparents fled Russia as they were owners and owned a big-ass goat farm. They were somehow related to the royal family, a fake. Then they fled to Bulgaria. I have the genetics of an elite power athlete. Edit, the phenotype does not match the genotype. It's obnoxious that 23andMe runs with this ACTN3 sports gene thing. It's in 20% of the population, so it's not that you would characterize people with the mutation as exceptional or likely to be an athlete, it's that in elite athletes you would find this mutation to be more common. Husband's ex-wife had a hunch their daughter, 8 at time, looked like a high school friend. On a whim she pulled her hair while the girl slept and tested it over winter break. My husband isn't the father. I had my suspicions but it didn't change anything, he's always been her dad. The mom had the bio dad write a threatening letter saying we better give the girl to him, a total stranger to her. We ignored and waited for a letter from a court, never came. He has zero interest it turns out. Mom knew all along and is a piece of human shit. Probably the ex-wife's first hunch that the daughter wasn't her husband's was when she repeatedly fell onto the neighbor's penis multiple times. My cousin did 23andMe hoping for something exotic to share with people, to stand out and be interesting. 99% Ashkenazi Jewish, 1% Eastern European. He complained on Facebook about it. El fucking sheem. I'm half Jewish from my mom's side, which I was raised Jewish. Knew I am Jewish, but man, it's boring AF to get my results only for it to say 50% Jewish. Like, yeah, thanks for the breakdown. We had a woman in our family tree that we were always told was Indigenous Canadian. She was too far back to reap any benefits like scholarships or whatnot, but it was very common knowledge that she existed. My mom got into genealogy a few years back and did a 23andMe or something, and it came back with no native blood. She did some deep research to find out who this woman was and discovered that she was a drinker and a smoker and generally not well liked. Calling her indigenous was in fact a slur with no factual backing. Ike, she was actually French. This exact same thing happened, but my sister was the one doing the digging. Turns out that back in the day, they would refer to someone born in the area as a native. I guess the family interpenetrated that to mean indigenous. Turns out that wasn't the case. My family background is just French people fucking French people. Though it's cool tracing your family back to when they first landed in Canada. If you're French and Canadian, we're probably related lol. That my mom's dad, my grandpa, wasn't her bio dad. She had no idea either and found out at 74 that the man who raised her wasn't her biological father.